It is Phil Valentine with you. 1-800-618-PHIL. That's 1-800-618-7445. One of our favorite guests is Judge Andrew Napolitano from Fox News, and he's got a new book out, Dred Scott's Revenge, and we welcome him to the program once again. Judge, how are you?
Oh, Phil, it's a pleasure to be on with you. I'm great. Thank you, and thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. Now, for those who don't, you correct me if I'm wrong, the Dred Scott was a slave who was traveling with his master, and they traveled into a free state, and Dred Scott sued and said that once he was in a free state, he should be able to be a free person. This went all the way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, no, you are not a free person. You're still a slave, even though you're in free territory.
You need no correction. You've summarized it very nicely, Phil. The title, Dred Scott's Revenge, A Legal History of Race and Freedom in America, is a metaphor for what the government can do to you and how the courts can twist words to justify it. The Supreme Court could have ruled, and there's a tortuous and fascinating legal history. It takes him 10 years to get to the Supreme Court, and his masters change, and there are well-known lawyers on both sides of the case because it's the seminal issue of the day. Is slavery constitutional? The Supreme Court could have ruled, once a slave, always a slave, and it could have ruled, once set free, forever remain free. Instead, it said, we can't hear your case because you're not a person under the Constitution, and we can only hear lawsuits filed by persons. So this is the worst of all outcomes. Now, you may say, well, this is 1857. That would never happen again. Unfortunately, it's the basis for the Supreme Court's decision in 1973 in Roe against Wade, in which the court defines babies in the womb as non-persons, and therefore no one can sue in their behalf, and therefore they can be killed, with the states say so, up to the moment of birth. So what is the lesson? The lesson is that even though the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence says all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and among them is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and even though the Constitution says no one shall lose life, liberty, or property without due process of law, in fact, the government has legislated away free will, and the government has taken away property, and the government has taken away human lives just by the way it defines people and defines things, and we have to be on our guard for this happening again.
Well, what you write in the book is the real culprit throughout our racial history has been the government. At every level, at virtually every turn, in every generation, the government selectively chose to enact and enforce laws and inevitably condoned and protected the most horrific abuse imaginable to blacks and to some the whites who protested. So you're saying that the worst offenders of racial injustice has actually been the government.
Well, the father of our country, George Washington, one of the first pieces of legislation he signed as president was the Fugitive Slave Act, which authorized anyone to kidnap a runaway slave, whether in a slave state or a free state, and bring that person back to the owner. And it immunized that person from any prosecution for local kidnapping. So a runaway slave in Georgia found in New Jersey could be kidnapped by anybody in New Jersey, even though in New Jersey it's illegal to kidnap anyone, and delivered against his will back to the owner in Georgia.
And that goes back to what we said with the Dred Scott ruling: is these aren't really people; these are property.
That's the way the court viewed them. So, listen, I'm not an iconoclast. I'm not writing to find the warts in everybody. My hero was Jefferson, but Jefferson had as a mistress his slave and fathered 7 children with her. I mean, Does that negate the wonderful things he wrote in the Constitution about all men are created equal? I don't think it negates them, but it does give you pause about a class of framers who would write the most wonderful things and fight for the most expansive freedom, but then only enjoy it for themselves and not for a class of people the color of whose skin was different than theirs. I also wrote this book because people shouldn't be afraid to discuss race. Look, I'm the House Libertarian at Fox News. I'm the Ron Paul guy here. So I disagree with just about everything Barack Obama is doing. But I am happy in a certain way that a biracial, intelligent, well-educated man is in the White House, because when I disagree with him, I'm not disagreeing with a black guy. I look right